Penn State is set to lose both of its top wide receivers to the transfer portal, and I just got done saying how they're national title contenders in 2025. Is that still the case? I'll tell you why it is.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Sako. I am your host of this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Just so much news to talk about, to react to, and both of Trey Wallace and Omari Evans are set to enter the transfer portal. So this was the total reset that we were talking about on this show that other people around the Penn State media said needed to happen here, and now it is happening. Trey Wallace was the number one in this Penn State offense. Omari Evans gave you that big play threat, and they're both not going to return for the 2025 season. Penn State is having that total reset at wide receiver. So, with that being said, I got done saying just the other day that Penn State was a national title contender in 2025, and I'm going to stand by that. Well, if they don't have anybody to throw to, how are they going to make the national championship and be a legitimate contender without those wide receivers? Isn't that the whole point of the reset? Isn't that it? It's not that Penn State is without any wide receivers. Let me start with the fact that Kyron Hudson from USC and Devontae Ross, who arguably might even be faster than Omari Evans, or at least the similar skill set, similar speed, are coming in. Liam Clifford, Caden Saunders still have decisions to make. There are wide receivers in the room, but that's not the formula that Penn State is going for. Penn State is going to have enough reliable pass catchers in the wide receiver room, but the formula, I've mentioned this already and I'll mention it again, it is going to be similar in the fact of Michigan 2023. I'm not talking about Connor Stallions. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the fact that you will have a capable veteran quarterback. You will have two elite running backs, an offensive line that was peaking in the postseason and is going to return a bulk of its starters, and it's just depth and rotation and trying to field a top 10, top 5 defense. That is the formula. That Michigan team from 2023 had Roman Wilson. That was a reliable receiver that was able to block on the outside, but that was a run-first team that relied on stout defense, and that's what Penn State's going for. Penn State returned the players that it needed most. It needed Drew Allerback, Nicholas Singleton, and Kaytron Allen. Now, Tyler Warren's going off to the NFL, but Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, those guys, that's the next man up in the tight end room, and those are pretty talented players. I liken them to Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren before Tyler Warren had his Heisman candidacy, but that's who that's comparable to. Luke Reynolds is going to break out sooner rather than later. And it's not that Penn State's going to neglect the wide receiver position. They started to address it, but they went through the postseason, and then the transfer portal wasn't exactly at the forefront of all of this. Don't forget, there's a second transfer portal window in the offseason. So when spring football's done, Penn State has another opportunity if they intend to go get some other playmakers. And I think that's kind of what's appealing here, is the fact that Penn State is going to have a total reset. Now, I know Tyler Warren is not going to be in the offense and accounted for a lot of the pass production, but someone that is looking to make a name for themselves certainly has an opportunity, because it is this newness of Penn State's passing game where you can be the guy. And that should be the pitch, that you can come in, compete for not only a national title caliber team, but one where you can be the face of this team and kind of right the wrongs of this wide receiver room over the past few seasons. I like what they bring in Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. Devontae Ross gives you that speed element. He is going to be your deep threat. Kyron Hudson is going to give you blocking ability, which is so important in this Penn State offense. You need a wide receiver that can block on the boundary. Hudson's going to be able to give you that. Oh, and Kyron Hudson can catch any football thrown his way. I don't have any questions about his receiving ability. Can he get the best separation? We'll see. That's going to take that's certainly going to be a question about his game, but if Drew Aller is going to target him, he is going to catch the football in traffic. Kyron Hudson can make just about any catch, any reception that you need him to. So that's what Penn State is initially getting. Unfortunately, we can't project what the spring transfer portal window is going to look like, what players are going to enter, how Penn State is going to be competitive in the wide receiver marketplace. We've talked to Brian Smith on the show, and he's the recruiting transfer portal expert. Really, he knows his stuff. And it's going to cost close to $1 million if Penn State wants to truly get that elite playmaker. But scheme matters. Play action. Andy Kotelnicki can scheme guys open and scheme them into better situations. So yes, a game-changing wide receiver would be nice, but don't forget that running backs and tight ends can catch passes too. I think what Penn State is going for here, and something that they wanted to run initially, we kind of saw a glimpse of it. What is Penn State's plan if that elite wide receiver it isn't there? Say they don't get them from the portal. You still have elite playmakers in this offense, and you have two of them at running back. Singleton and Allen were arguably top 10 running backs going into this year's NFL draft, and they're returning. They're only going to get better. They're only going to diversify their skill set. Who says you can't have them on the football field at the same time? Oh, and Singleton's going to motion into the slot. What linebacker is going to cover him on a quick slant? On a screen pass? You can get creative. But what I was alluding to about with that West Virginia game was when Cam Wallace was healthy and unfortunately sustained an injury, but Penn State wasn't able to go into those three running back sets or even use Allen and Singleton at the same time. Now you can. Okay, Cam Wallace is still recovering from a long-term injury. Maybe he's not 100% right away, but that's where Corey Smith and Quentin Martin come into play. Now you have two other veteran running backs who went through their redshirt season, were able to develop, and now you can trust. They showed that they were trustworthy, more so Corey Smith, because Quentin Martin did actually deal with some bumps and bruises throughout the season. But you do have other options now in that running back room to where you can just purely put your best 11 on the football field. You need a stout offensive line. Penn State's going to have that. You need a veteran quarterback. Look, everybody's going to pick on Drew for the Notre Dame game, and I certainly did myself, but that is not a declaration of who he is as a player, as a prospect, going into his fourth season of college football and his third year starting. He is going to get better. Second year in Andy Kotelnicki's system. Andy Kotelnicki can run what I kind of joked about it in a way, but you can hypothetically run the wishbone offense with Penn State's personnel currently. And it would succeed because you are purely getting the best 11 football players that Penn State has to offer in that offense. You're going to get formations like it. You're going to get three running backs at a time from Andy Kotelnicki. You're going to get three tight end sets. Andrew Rapplier is going to come back from injury. Who knows if they recruited three tight ends in this class of 2025. Who says that one couldn't emerge and be a reliable receiving target? It doesn't have to be a wide receiver. That's my point. Michigan did it without a clear-cut, game-changing type of wide receiver. It is not to discredit Roman Wilson, but we can say that Kyron Hudson can be that. And Devontae Ross is going to force safeties to respect the deep pass. And we know that Drew Aller can throw the deep ball. We saw it throughout the season with Omari Evans. Why Omari Evans and Trey Wallace are entering the transfer portal? Well, we're going to talk about it on the other side of this break because, yes, Penn State needs wide receivers. So why were the two top wide receivers from the 2024 team entering the portal? We're going to get into that, plus your comments on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's live show is brought to you by WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC, and you'll find that decluttering and refreshing your space helps you get back into a routine. Whether you are tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, WayFair has everything you need, and it's all within your budget. You can look at the furniture selection, and there is a huge selection, and it makes it easy to find the pieces that will fit your style and fit your budget. The best part of it all, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. WayFair's site is very easy to navigate, and you'll find everything you need in no time. There's something for every style, every home, no matter your space or your budget. And WayFair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. And if you're in a time crunch, that delivery is fast and it's hassle-free. Get it, and it is free. Give your home a refresh it needs with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That is WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. Thank you for joining this live show. We will talk about get your reaction to all of this, the conversation. We can go any direction, right? I am going to talk about Smith Vilbert coming back, Nick Dawkins coming back, Kobe King not coming back, and interesting farewell post from him as well. And maybe we'll get into that in the comments too. But Trey Wallace and Omari Evans, they're not bad players. They're not bad wide receivers, but they're what Penn State needed from them, they disappointed. They failed. And we saw it against West Virginia, against the likes of Maryland, obviously Bowling Green and Kent State too. But basically, if it wasn't Ohio State and Notre Dame, Penn State's wide receivers did something. Trey Wallace is a capable wide receiver. But when it came to the best of the best, elite secondaries, nowhere to be found. One target, no catches across the board from the wide receivers. I don't know that Marcus Hagans should get a pass in all of this. I will talk about the positives here, is that Hagans is doing well in recruiting. Class of 2024, right direction. Class of 2025, really solid direction. And the prospects that they got, a Matthew Alton, a Kobe Howard, a Jeff Exener, a Lyric Samuel. But Penn State needs the production or needs something now, right? But that's what Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross are for. So to say that Marcus Hagans isn't doing anything, isn't doing his job at all, is just not true. And I get the frustration from Penn State fans, because where is the production? Where is something? I feel like this is Hagans' last go around. If Penn State doesn't see any sort of progress, because it can't get any worse, right? Can it really get any worse? I don't think so. So for Trey Wallace and Omari Evans to go into the portal, it part of it's frustration. Part of it was kind of similar to Keandre Lambert-Smith from a season ago, that there's just going to be this open competition. And yes, Wallace and Evans were the first two wide receivers in this room, but they probably aren't going to be in the next one for 2025. Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross are going to have lofty expectations, but again, kind of the no pressure. It's how can it get any worse than it already is? I like that Hudson and Ross give you specialty types of things. Yes, you would want that to be in that skill set all in one player, but Kyron Hudson gives you that spectacular catch ability, that reliability in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Who are you looking for? And that deep threat, because Omari Evans, if you didn't have a replacement, it wouldn't be ideal to lose Omari Evans. But now you have a contingency plan with Devontae Ross, and probably someone that, Penn State feels confident in the wide receivers that they've picked up already, but the work's not done. That's what the spring transfer portal window is for. So they're going to add more wide receivers. They're definitely going to try, and I think they're going to be competitive financially. Since NIL's initiation, Penn State was certainly behind the 8 ball, but now they are catching up. They've caught up, and that's why you're seeing Drew Aller return, Nicholas Singleton, and Katron Allen, who could have went off to the NFL and made some money. As fun as it is for outsiders to say that Drew Aller is not that good and Penn State is not a national title contender, these are good players. These are elite players that are going to go into their 4th years of college football and consecutive years of starting. Singleton and Allen, I pointed it out yesterday. When was the last time a team had 2 co-starter running backs start all 4 years and stay all 4 years? I got to imagine that has not happened since the 70s or the 80s, because there's the allure of the NFL, especially in the present, the transfer portal, right? But you can have both of them on the football field together. You can scheme pass plays to them as well. Everybody can catch passes. It doesn't have to be just the wide receivers. You have definitely a lot of different players that can contribute. Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, eventually an Andrew Rapplier, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. The offensive line is going to be at its best under Phil Troutwine, and probably one of the best under James Franklin's tenure in going into year 12. That is why I do not bat an eye. And then they return starting center Nick Dawkins. They return Smith Vilbert. And honestly, I'll be transparent. I didn't think he had any more eligibility left. You were getting a 7th-year player because he was injured for the 2023 season, has the COVID eligibility. You're getting a strong side defensive end that will rotate in frequently. So Penn State needs to hit a home run at defensive coordinator. And if and when it does, that is the perfect puzzle. This is the perfect blueprint for Penn State to make this title run. So my opinion does not change with Wallace and Evans. And we talked about the potential of Omari Evans going into the portal. That was something to be expected. I'm honestly not surprised about Trey Wallace. You look at Keandre Lambert-Smith, it worked out for him. And Penn State got to a national semifinal without any production from the wide receivers. Little to no production. So anything, if the wide receivers can even slightly step up from that, it is a step in the right direction. Everyone's been patient. Let's get to the comments section. That wide receiver room needs an exorcism. Well, there's the total reset that, and people, I think there was a fair amount of surprise from Penn State fans. This is what was, Penn State fans were calling for this. Select ones, not everybody. But people are so surprised to see Trey Wallace, Omari Evans. Don't forget Tyler Johnson, Mekhi Flowers, 4 wide receivers from Penn State's group went into the portal. And they're saying, well, this is bad. How could this happen? But you're criticizing the same players that are leaving. So which is it, right? 4 tight end sets. Here we come. 3 running back sets. Here we come. Andy Kotelnicki, and it will work. I fully expect to see some iteration of the wishbone. Katron Allen will be your fullback, right? And then you have Cam Wallace and Nicholas Singleton. They showed that against West Virginia. Just Cam Wallace, unfortunately, sustained that long-term injury, but now you have Corey Smith. Now you have Quentin Martin. And James Franklin talked about how those two can catch passes. Okay. You can line players up. You can get strategic. It doesn't have to be they're not a wide receiver, so they can't make a catch. You're just going to have to work with the personnel that you have. The wide receiver room seriously needed an upgrade. Trey and Omari just weren't cutting it. Against West Virginia, against Maryland, against other competition, UCLA, yeah, they were. But when it came into crunch time, against the best of the best, Ohio State, Notre Dame, nowhere to be found. 4 tight end and 0 wide receiver sets. Love the revamp. Caden and Tyseer are going to be legit, and the 2 transfers, tight end room is loaded. This is all good. It starts up front. I don't think enough people talk about that the offensive line is where it is. They add a TJ Shanahan, who was a former 5-star prospect. That's just kind of gone off the radar. It starts up front. Penn State's offensive line is not only its most talented, it is as deep as it is. And then that just it just sets everything else up, because then it gives you time for your play to develop. You can run play action. You can run different formations that just, what does Andy Kotelnicki like to do? He wants to cause confusion. He wants to cause miscommunication. Just get your best 11 on the football field. If that happens to be 3 running backs and 2 tight ends in a given formation, so be it. Like I said, Michigan ran a pretty simple pro-style offense that didn't really ask a lot. You had the running ability of J.J. McCarthy, and I know, look at me talking about how good Michigan was, right? But J.J. McCarthy, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, that is a similar setup to Drew Aller, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. They had 2 reliable tight ends. Colston Loveland didn't really take that next step, and I know he dealt with an injury in 24, but he wasn't that projected elite tight end. He shared reps. He split reps. That's kind of where Luke Reynolds is at this point in time, but Khalil Dinkins is a veteran and should not be forgotten about. There's a reason he's had playing time. It's just the timeshare. Tyler Warren became that elite playmaker. But remember, he wasn't utilized that much when Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson were around. They are going to throw to Singleton a lot. And Singleton, it is on him to become that elite pass catcher. And that's what he's going to work on to diversify his game. He came in as a running back that just, out of high school, saw it in person myself, being in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania here. When Singleton was at Governor Mifflin, it was basically take the handoff and you run. That was the offense at Governor Mifflin, and it worked. Now I imagine he's going to split out wide. He's going to be used more in this receiver type role. And Katron Allen can do the same thing. Katron Allen is the better receiver in terms of actual ability. But of course, Singleton has the speed. So they complement each other well. It can work just because it's not the prettiest or it's the flashiest in college football. But if it gets the job done, top 5 defense, you need at least a top 10, and you had that this season. And there's no reason without a defensive coordinator at this point, with the talent that Penn State has returning, that this won't be a top 10 group, no matter who you insert as that defensive coordinator. But if you get an elite caliber guy who will call the defense, then you're going to maximize the talent. And I think that's kind of what the concern that everybody has, that Tom Allen didn't do enough with what he had. And so be it. I mean, Tom Allen still gave you a top 10 defense. You can mess things up. You can mess things up. And I know at times it seemed, well, Tom Allen's not doing his job, or Penn State's defense was still top 10. It's not ideal, but Penn State has the opportunity to get somebody better. And that's saying something. That they're going to be able to upgrade a top 10 defense. Crazy enough. Jonte Cook back in the portal. Yes, the ante up, the former Texas wide receiver. We'll see what Penn State ultimately does there. I don't know that. Remember, Penn State still wants to recruit players that are going to fit culturally. And I mean, personally, Jonte Cook is certainly dealing with handling, just assimilating to programs, right? So it's not every wide receiver that enters the portal is going to automatically be a Penn State target. They still kind of have to fit the mold. Yes, this is something that has not been pointed out enough, or it's starting to at least circulate. Remember, Penn State has wideouts. They're just not. You need them to have that breakout. So Tyzer Denmark will be elite next season. The young man is a beast, and that's what we were waiting for. When was Tyzer Denmark going to break through? Because we saw a lot of positive. We saw it at practice. The media members kind of looking around and saying, this dude's legitimate. That was my immediate takeaway. And of course, it's 10, 15 minutes on a weekly practice once a week. But you can tell a lot just from the way that he was running routes. He honestly looked like one of the best route runners as a true freshman. So give him, because he didn't enroll early, so give him winter workouts, give him spring football, and give him another summer. And that's when he can turn the corner. So it's there. Josiah Brown, Peter Gonzalez are recovering from injuries. So don't let the class of 2024 be an afterthought. And like I said, this is completely wide open. So there is an opportunity for the guys in 2025, especially the ones that enrolled early, to at least be involved. I'm not saying that they're going to be a number 1 wide receiver right out of the gate and have all these reps and playing time. But it is just that it is a total reset. It truly is. Keandre Lambert-Smith, out. Trey Wallace, out. Omari Evans, out. Julian Fleming has to move on. We'll see what decisions the Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford make, because they still have to. But the good news is Penn State is getting back both offensive captains are back. Drew Aller and now Nick Dawkins, the center. He's coming back for his 6th season, and Smith Vilbert as well. Defensive end gets a little more certainty here. And after being called out by a former Penn State defensive lineman, I actually want to provide some insight here as what the defensive end room could really look like next season. We'll talk about that more on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find any subscriptions that you might have forgotten about or that you were paying for twice. Now, that's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's those subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit in the new year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And one of the best features is that subscription tracker. You can use it to cancel services that you don't use anymore, and you will save a ton. Plus, with the goals feature, you'll automatically be able to set aside money for your future, and then there's no stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Nick Dawkins is returning. Kobe King is not, but Smith Vilbert is returning. So those are the players that I definitely want to discuss here in this final segment, and then return to the comments section one final time to get any final thoughts. But Penn State getting an offensive captain, getting both of them back, Drew Aller and Nick Dawkins, it starts to the offensive line. It is going to be one of Penn State's biggest strengths, and that's something that is almost unheard of in James Franklin's tenure. But it's the testament that it's the commitment that James Franklin has had, saying, okay, enough is enough. We're going to build out the offensive line. Who's going to be tasked to do that? And then Phil Troutwine comes in, and then it goes from okay to respectable to good. And then they started to play great football down the stretch of the season, especially against top tier teams. Oregon, Boise State, SMU. Oh, well, Boise State and SMU, those aren't good teams, but they still had solid front sevens that would have given a lot of teams fits. And Penn State's offensive line stepped up against Notre Dame. They were able to maul them in the ground game and gave Drew Aller at least enough time. Like I said, I put a lot of responsibility on Drew Aller in that game. But Penn State's offensive line certainly was not the issue. Again, they peaked against the best of the best teams that they faced all season long. So if and when they get Drew, because Drew Shelton, Venga Ioane, right, still have decisions to make, technically Nolan Rucci as well. Sal Wormley is off to the NFL. He is out of eligibility, but Nick Dawkins is coming back. Nick Dawkins is one of the best teammates that any Penn State teammate will argue that he is one of the best players to play alongside. So it's almost like that, recruiting in itself. Singleton kind of recruiting, Katron Allen to come back and run it back one more time. Deny Dennis Sutton, the same thing. These faces of the locker room, and Nick Dawkins is that, the mayor of State College, as he's often referred to by James Franklin. So man of the people, right? So Nick Dawkins is going to be the starting center. We'll see what that right guard spot looks like with Cooper Cousins and TJ Shanahan, but either one, I feel like you can't go wrong with either of them. And you can get a rotation. You have the depth. Nolan Rucci, when Anthony Donko comes back at right tackle. At left guard, you hope that it's still Venga Ioane. He continues there. Same thing, Drew Shelton. Those guys, I imagine they are. I haven't heard anything that says otherwise, that they will go to the NFL. Definitely not the portal. I don't think any of those guys are transferring because they're starters, right? But another year of experience would do them well, and it gets back most of the starting five. Shanahan, Cooper Cousins. We'll see who takes that right guard spot now that Nick Dawkins is the center. So for the most part, you get 4 out of 5. That's 80% consistency right there for a group that is really good. Smith Vilbert coming back. Let's talk about the defensive end room. So Devon J. Thomas responded to my initial depth chart projection, and I'll be honest, I was wrong. Abdul Carter moving on. Okay, Deny Dennis Sutton's coming back, and kind of just projecting things through. And I didn't realize Smith Vilbert had the extra eligibility, but yes, he does. He's been around for that long in college football. Not trying to make any points about that. The point above it all is that you are getting a veteran defender, 7 years of college football, and a good one when he is healthy. 3 sacks against Arkansas in the Outback Bowl in 2021. Who remembers that? So you're probably not going to get 3 sack type of games from Smith Vilbert routinely, but you're getting somebody that is 6'6", 280 pounds, your true strong side defensive end that will rotate in frequently. Penn State likes to rotate 4 defensive ends. So Dani Dennis Sutton, Smith Vilbert is your 1-2 on that strong side. Weak side defensive end, which is where Abdul Carter routinely is, who is that going to be? And I thought, okay, Anai White, why would they go get him in the transfer portal if they didn't need him to be a starter? But based on what Jay Thomas alluded to, that might not need to be the case. So Anai White is going to be important because give him time to develop. He can maybe live up to that 5-star potential. Look at the wonders that Deion Barnes has done with Chop Robinson. Abdul Carter coming from linebacker and becoming the best defensive end in college football. And now Anai White is going to have maybe not necessarily becoming an Abdul Carter top 5 NFL draft pick, but if Deion Barnes can work things out with Chop Robinson, who transferred in from Maryland, making Abdul Carter go from an elite linebacker to an elite defensive end in 1 season. That was 1 year. Abdul Carter's played 1 year at defensive end, and he became a top 5 NFL draft pick. Might honestly in the conversation to go number 1 overall, crazy enough. So that's what Deion Barnes can do. So I have optimism for Anai White. But let me mention Zuriah Fisher. Zuriah Fisher has become a little bit an afterthought because he's injured, and he's been injured, and it's unfortunate, but Zuriah Fisher had an incredible run the first time he had a long-term injury, got in the rehab room, and honestly returned to the football field sooner than anybody expected, even the Penn State football team, and showed out in a reserve role. Well, the way that Devon J. Thomas is talking about it, Zuriah Fisher seems to be that starter in waiting, that replacement for Abdul Carter. He's not going to give you Abdul Carter type of production, but I kind of liken him to Smith Vilbert, that he will give you reliability. He can help you in pass rushing situations and in run defense. And then that still allows Anai White to develop on his own timeline. Max Granville, Jalen Harvey. It doesn't force any of these guys into action when they're not ready. So don't forget about Zuriah Fisher. Devon J. Thomas reminded me, hey, Zuriah Fisher is going to be more than just a reserve rotational guy. While not saying outright that he's going to start, but Zuriah Fisher is going to contend for that starting spot if he's not already in line to do just that. So that's the defensive end room. Let me briefly address Kobe King. That's a big deal, but as frequent listeners of the show, viewers of the show know that I was not anticipating Kobe King to return as much as Kobe King probably wanted to. He's been in college football a long time. Remember, he has a twin brother in the NFL. I think that was Kalen and Kobe will never outright say, hey, we are our own individual people, but come on, they're siblings, they're twins. And for them to be on a different timeline as it is, they've done everything together. They played high school football together, and then they separated after 3 years of Penn State football. Kobe King wants to be on that similar timeline now where the NFL is it's the same thing with KJ Winston. I don't blame anybody for going to the pros. You'll make millions of dollars. You have NIL now, which it's okay to delay your decision. But when you're at this 50-50 spot, should I return? Should I go to the pros? I don't blame any player for making either decision. I don't blame Dani Dennis Sutton for betting on himself and saying, I can be one of the first defensive ends taken in 2026. Kobe King saying, I want to play in the pros now. I want to be back in a similar situation with Kalen King, my twin brother. He did not thank Tom Allen in his farewell post. I don't want to stir anything, but plenty of people certainly pointed it out. If you had missed it, Kobe King had thanked Brent Pry, Manny Diaz, and that's crazy to think that he was coached by Brent Pry for a season, then Manny Diaz, and then Tom Allen. But he thanked Dan Connor, James Franklin, not Tom Allen. He did not mention Tom Allen. You can kind of start to see why Penn State did not exactly fight to bring Tom Allen back. Look, I'm not saying that things were bad because they still had a top 10 defense, but there was clearly some disconnects that if you want specifics of that, I've addressed it. I've gone on other shows to talk about it. I've talked about it in live streams, why Tom Allen jumps from Penn State to Clemson after just 1 season. Not everything was perfect, and from Tom Allen's point of view and from Penn State's point of view. That's all I need. If you really want to read into the rumors of it all and try to figure out the drama, go for it. Not every player is going to like every single coach, but it is a little bit telling. It just kind of adds a little bit of clarity in this situation. Why does a coach who just let a top 10 defense leave after one season? All right, so we'll get back to the comments real fast. Try to pick up my spot here. Looks like James Franklin told the entire wide receiver room they weren't getting paid and what they think they are worth. Nice. I mean, those conversations are legitimate, not just at wide receiver, anywhere. And with the transfer portal, I don't want to imply that Penn State, here's the thing. Penn State players have, football players in general, it's not just Penn State players, but I want to carefully articulate this, is that if you have an honest conversation with a player and how, right, you have a performance review, you have an end of the year meeting with the coaches, your position coach, and if you don't like what they have to say, you can go in the portal. It's there. The coaches will be honest with you and say, hey, this is what your role is for next season. We want you back. Or honestly, some coaches will be like, get out, go into the portal. I don't know how James Franklin and the position coaches do it. I know that some other coaches will absolutely conduct themselves that way. Get out, go. We don't want you here anymore. So that is the double-ended sword of the transfer portal where, oh, it's great, player mobility. It also gives coaches free range to push players into the portal if they really want to. So it's the transfer portal looks great, but honestly, there's a dark side to it as well. With Durant, Sutton, Singleton, and Allen back the first time since 1999, I have the mindset that Penn State is a bona fide number one team in the country. They have to prove it, right? They have to prove it. I solidly top three. Fortunately for Penn State, I don't want to try to negative, kind of this negativity. Well, that, Ohio State's going to take a step back. Oregon's going to take a step back, but they have some question marks. Penn State very well might be the top team going into the next season. They got to prove it. James Franklin's got to break the big game stigma. That's the thing. There are no excuses. If Penn State does not contend for a Big Ten conference title and does not make it to at least the national semifinal, because if they made it with this team, the expectation is that they should absolutely be there again with this one in 2025, the one that's shaping up in 2025, because they can still make portal moves. I am this confident now because they have quarterback taken care of. Oregon can't say that. They have not one, but two stud, elite, NFL ready now running backs. The best offensive line of James Franklin's tenure, the depth to go along with it to kind of, because that was my hesitation for this Penn State team. I said that originally. I said Penn State would finish 10-2 in 2024, but be a playoff contender. I didn't know if they would make it to the national semifinal, but the injuries, they didn't exactly have the depth. They have depth to kind of go through the motions if they do lose somebody for an extended period of time that you're not expecting. So that's it. Injuries are part of the game, but you have to talk about it. So yes, have the confidence in this team. They're just going to put the best 11 out there, and we'll see what defensive coordinator holds. If they can get Danton Lynn, man. Danton Lynn's my top choice. I know that they're Jim Knowles or Al Golden or those long shot defensive coordinator options. Danton Lynn's mine. I hope they can get Danton Lynn away from USC. Could we not hire anyone for DC this season and see who steps up from within? The window of opportunity is now, and the reason that an Anthony Poindexter or Anthony Poindexter very well could be the choice, but if they are available, there are better options out there. And that's why Anthony Poindexter continues to kind of be passed over here. I don't think Penn State has the time to allow Poindexter or a Dan Connor with in-house or a Terry Smith. And I don't think Terry Smith is because he's the associate head coach, right? He's James Franklin's right-hand man. And this is where I'll wrap up. But I'll say it again. Penn State needs either the Andy Kotelnicki equivalent at defensive coordinator or that Jim Knowles, Al Golden. I know those are long shots, but that's what Penn State is. Penn State's shooting for the stars. You can't have a defensive coordinator when you are in a championship. This is championship win now mode. You don't have time for a first-time defensive play caller to get situated, get adjusted, learn from their mistakes. It is a 12-game regular season. Yes, you can go 10-2 like Ohio State did. Penn State can go 10-2 in the regular season. Now I know that doesn't sound great, and I get, they're a national title contender, but you can be 10-2 and clearly make the national title game. But what I'm saying is, Penn State is really taking a risk if you're going after a first-time play caller because of what they might be. If Penn State wasn't in win now mode, I'd say absolutely. Dan Connor makes a lot of sense. Give him 2-3 years, kind of like a Brent Pry type of situation. But I disagree with that now. You need somebody, it is worth, go all in. And that is what Penn State is doing. Go all in on the 2025 season, win a national title, because it has been a long time. I know what 1994 was, but objectively, most people are going to say that Penn State has not won a title in nearly 40 years. Penn State has to go all in on this season. You're going to eventually lose Andy Kotelnicki. You're probably going to lose that hypothetical defensive coordinator in a season or two. Look what just happened with Manny Diaz and Tom Allen, right? But I trade it all for a national championship for the 2025-26 season. Whew, that was a lot we covered in today's show. Thank you so much for joining the live show, spending your Tuesday night with me. I really appreciate it. If you're new to the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel wherever you get your podcasts. Really, I'm grateful for all of you and contributing your thoughts in the live chat as well. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. And we talk about more than just football on this show. Basketball, wrestling is getting ready to go into the heart of the Big Ten schedule. So be on the lookout for content around those sports as well. And I'll talk to you very soon again, as the Penn State football news is not going to slow down here, but that's why it is your team every day over here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And that's why it's called Locked On Nittany Lions.